The mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar on Rosh Hashana is a most mysterious mitzvah. We eat matzah on Pesach, we know why. Lo hispik b'tzeikom shel avoseinu lahachmitz. The dough of our forefathers as they left Mitzrayim in haste didn't have time to rise. We eat the maror to commemorate the bitterness of life in Mitzrayim. We sit in the sukkah on Sukkos to commemorate the tents that we sat in during our journey in the desert, or to commemorate the Anane HaKavod, the clouds of glory. But what's the meaning and significance of blowing the shofar on the first day of Chodesh Tishrei? It's not explained, not in the Torah, and not in the Mishnayos, and not in Gemara. In Tehillim, chapter 81, we read, Tiku b'chodesh shofar, b'keseh l'yoim chagenu. Very difficult psukim. Tiku b'chodesh shofar means blow as the moon renews itself at the moon's renewal. B'chodesh shofar, she'll blow a shofar. B'keseh l'yoim chagenu is at the appointed time, b'keseh, for the day of our festivals. Ki choik li Yisrael hu mishpat le'elokei Yaakov, because it's a decree for Yisrael, a judgment for the Elokim of Yaakov. Eidus b'Yehoisef samoi b'tzeisoi al eretz Mitzrayim. As a testimony for Yosef, he appointed it when he went out over the land of Egypt. Sfas lo yodati eshmo, a language unknown to him, unknown to me, I heard. These psukim are very challenging in simple pshat. The Radak says, Tiku b'chodesh shofar, Yom Rishon shel chodesh. B'chodesh means the first day of the month. V'omar, and he's saying, B'zeh hayoim, shehu Rosh Chodesh, on this day, which is Rosh Chodesh, Tiku shofar, you shall blow the shofar, Ki Moshe tziva eschem Moshe, as Moshe told you to do on the day of Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Says the Radak, v'nire, it would seem, ki zeh hu tam mitzvah satrua, this is the reason for the mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar b'Rosh Hashanah. Lefi, shebotlu avoseinu me'avodosom b'Mitzrayim b'yom zeh. Because on this day, the Gemara tells us in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, we were freed from labor in Mitzrayim. We only left Mitzrayim 6 months later, on Pesach, but from Rosh Hashanah we stopped working in Mitzrayim. V'hatrua hi siman l'shiluach avodim, blowing a shofar is a sign of releasing slaves. And the Radak goes on, Ki choik li Yisrael hu zeh she'ani oimer lochem tiku, this that I'm telling you to blow the shofar, choiku mishpotu aleichem, it's a decree, it's a mitzvah on you, shetzivo eschem Elokei Yaakov, that Hashem gave you, v'lomo tzivo eschem, and why did He command you to blow the shofar? Eidus b'Yehoisef somoi, He made it a testimony for Yosef. Koloimar zeicher ve'eidus som, ze hachoik shehu tkiyas shofar b'Yehoisef, k'mo Yosef. Yehoisef is like Yosef, and all Jews are named Yosef. Umahi Oedus. What is the Eidus? What is the testimony of the shofar? B'tzeisoy al eretz Mitzrayim, that this was the time that Yidden were free in Egypt. So the Radak is telling us that Tkiyas Shofar is to commemorate the Bitul HaAvoide, the fact that we were freed of labor in Mitzrayim on the first day of Tishrei. As the Gemara tells us in Rosh Hashana, that on the first day of Tishrei we were freed from labor in Mitzrayim. The Gemara in Rosh Hashana has another pshat that Yosef doesn't mean all Yidden that are called Yosef, but it actually means Yosef, one of the 12 Shvatim. And the Gemara says that on Rosh Hashanah, Yosef was released from jail in Mitzrayim. He was put into jail by Potiphar, and on Rosh Hashanah he was released from jail. But if the pasuk is referring to Yosef, it's kind of hard to understand that we have a mitzvah for all generations to commemorate that occasion that Yosef was released from jail. Why is that something that all of us need to commemorate every year? It must be that Yosef's release from jail has meaning and significance to all Yidden in all times. On the pasuk, Eidus b'Yehosef somoy b'tzeisoy al eretz Mitzrayim svas lo yodati eshmo, the Gemara in Soite, Daf Lamed Vav Amid Bey, says that Reb Chia bar Abba said in the name of Reb Yochanan that at the time that Paroi said to Yosef that without you no man shall lift his hand or foot, Paroi's astrologers exclaimed, will you set in power over us a slave whom his master bought for 20 pieces of silver? Amru itztegine Paroi eved shelokochoi raboi be'eschim kesef tamshilehu aleinu. Amar lohen, Paroi said to them, Ginunei malchus ani roye boy. I discern in him royal characteristics. So they said to him, Amru loi, im kain, if so, yehei yoideya b'shivim loshoin. In that case, he must be acquainted with the 70 languages. Bo Gavriel v'limdoi shivim loshin. The angel Gavriel came and taught Yosef HaTzadik 70 languages. Shenemar Eidus b'Yehosef somoy b'tzeisoy al eretz Mitzrayim sfas lo yodati eshmo. I heard a language unknown to me. That alludes to the fact that Yosef HaTzadik overnight learned all the languages that were unknown to him. It would seem that Yosef merited to become acquainted with 70 languages that were unknown to him for the same reason that he merited exiting the jail in Mitzrayim, as we will explain. The pasuk says in Parshas Vayeshev, Vayachlamu chaloim shnehem, the chief baker and the chief wine butler, the mashke and the oife, they both had a dream. Vayovay aleim Yosef ba'boiker, and Yosef came to them. He was in jail with them, and he came to them in the morning, to the Sar HaMashkin and to the Sar HaOifim. Vayar oisom, and he saw them. Vehinam zoyafim. They looked aggrieved. They looked depressed. They weren't looking good. Vayishal esorisei Paroi, so he asked the ministers of Paroi, asheitoi b'mishmar beis Adoinov, that were in jail with him, Madua pneichem roim hayoim. Why do you appear downcast? And as a consequence, they told him about their dreams, and as we know, 2 years later, when Paroi had dreams, it was suggested that Yosef knows how to interpret dreams based on the fact that he interpreted the dreams of the baker and the butler, and that's how Yosef actually got out of jail and became the Mishneh L'Melech Mitzrayim. Now the question is, Vayar oisom, where did it all begin? Vayar oisom v'hinam zoyafim. He saw them and they looked downcast. They looked depressed. They looked sad. Now, Yosef himself was in jail. Usually somebody has his own tsuris, has his own problems, he gets wrapped up in his own problems. He doesn't notice if other people are looking good or looking bad. I mean, it's really not something that he sees. He doesn't look out at all. And whom are we talking about? Sarisei Paroi, ministers of Paroi, people that worked for the regime that actually put Yosef into the jail. He should have had really very little feeling for them. Why would he even care if they're happy or sad? Besides for that, I mean, obviously Yosef, who was a tzaddik and a servant of Hashem all his life, had very little in common with ministers in Paro's regime in Egypt, Ervas Ha'oretz. So there would be a distance between him and them. A distance that should have caused that he wouldn't even notice. Wouldn't even notice that Pneihem Ro'im Hayoim. Besides for the fact that when people are in jail, they most probably don't look very happy. So it's safe to assume that the day before they also looked bad, but they looked worse today. And that little difference between how they appeared today and how they appeared yesterday was something that he took note of. So it's kind of amazing that in spite of the fact that they said nothing, Yosef nevertheless noticed that Hinom Zoyafim, they looked downcast, and he cared, and he took an interest, and he asked, Madua Pneichem Roim Hayoim. And that's really what opened up the door for his eventual release. Through that one question, his entire life, and the life of the entire land of Egypt, and the life of the Jewish people was transformed. Yosef was attentive to non-verbal expressions. Hinom Zoyafim. He was sensitive to others. That's the madrege, that's the level of Sfas Lo Yodati Eshma. Somebody who's attentive to what's beyond the spoken word merits Sfas Lo Yodati Eshma. He rises above the barrier of language. He knows all the 70 languages because he hears everyone. There's a mushal, a parable from the Heilige Baal Shem Tov that explains Tkiyas Shofar. There once was a king who had an only son who was smart, he was talented, he was kind-hearted. He had all the positive qualities a father would like to see in his son. However, the king, the father, felt that it would be good that the son go out on his own and develop on his own, because all his life he's been raised in his father's palace, and therefore everything he has is really a consequence of what his father gave him, his surroundings, his upbringing, and it's time that he should develop on his own. He gave him some money, some food, some clothing, and he sent him out in the Medina Samelech to travel in the countries over which the king ruled, and to see what he can make of himself. Well, the son set out on this journey. However, since all his life he was accustomed to having people take care of him, having servants attend to all his needs, and now he was all on his own. So before he knew it, the food was gone, the money was gone, and he was in trouble. Unfortunately, he fell in with a group of bandits that used to, petty thieves, and he joined them. just in order to take care of his needs. And so he slowly but surely went down and down to the point that he forgot who he is. He no longer remembered that he's a prince. He lost all his refined character. He even forgot the language of his father's country. And he lost contact with his father totally. Then one day, he was traveling in a city and he heard the celebrations. He noticed that people are celebrating, and he asked them, what is this about? So they said, do you not know? Today's the anniversary of the crowning of the king. Every year, on the day of his coronation, we celebrate because the king is so kind and so good to us. And then it hit him, wow, the king is my father. And suddenly, it brought back all those memories and those feelings, and he so much wanted to go back to his father and meet him once again. So he started traveling from city to city, from town to town, from country to country, in order to get back to his father's palace. He finally comes to the father's palace and stands at the gate, and he wants to ask the guards. They let him in, but they don't understand his language because he doesn't anymore speak the language. He tries to show them who he is, but they don't believe him. I mean, he's dressed in rags. I mean, he doesn't resemble a prince in any which way. So then it really hit him how bad his situation is, and he let out a cry so loud that the king in the palace heard that cry and recognized his voice and came out and brought him in, and so on and so forth. Says the Baal Shem Tov, the same is true with the neshama. That's a chelik Eloka mimal. It's a divine. It's a spark of godliness sent down into this world, in order that we make it on our own, in order that we live in a world where we have tests and challenges, and we grow from these tests and challenges. But so often, instead of growing and developing, we fall back, and we lose our level. We even forget our spiritual language, and we can't articulate our thoughts. We don't have the words to talk to the Rebbeinu Shalom with. So then we let out that cry. That cry is the Shofar. We let out that cry. We say, Shema koilenu, Hashem Elokeinu, Chus v'rachem oleinu, v'kabel berachamim u'v'rotzoin es tefiloseinu. Hear our voice, even when we're not capable of tefiloseinu, even when we're not capable of prayer, but hear the sound of our voice, and hear how desperate we are, and how much we would like to be able to tell you how close we would want to be with you. That's the idea of the shofar. But in what merit do we expect that Hashem should hear our cry? That He should listen to our non-verbal expression? Eidus biyahoyseif somoy betzeisoy al eretz Mitzrayim sfas lo yodati eshmo. The shofar that talks the language unknown is an eidus, is a testimony to the release of Yosef al eretz Mitzrayim and his meriting sfas lo yodati eshmo, that he hears a language unknown to him. And all Yidden that are named after Yosef, inasmuch as they try to go in Yosef's ways and be attentive to the non-verbal expression, to notice somebody's sad face, to care enough about how, if one appears downcast, to care enough to ask a question, to care enough to lend a helping hand. If we have that, then we merit that the Rabbeinu Shalom should listen to our non-verbal expressions. So the Shofar is really about a non-verbal form of communication with the Rabbeinu Shalom. Those of us who try to be attentive to the non-verbal messages that other people in pain are sending us will merit that the Rabbeinu Shalom should hear our Shema Koilenu. Tazin Shavosenu. It's just a cry. Shavosenu. V'sakshiv menu ma'amor. You should hear out of the Shava a ma'amor. You should make it into an articulate statement. You know that these days of judgment are not just a judgment for the here and now. The Ran already in Masechtas Rosh Hashana, Daf Tezayin, explains that this judgment goes back to the roots of all evil. It goes back to the Chet Eitz Hadas and to the Chet Ha'egel. These two sins are cardinal sins in Bein Odom Lamokoim, between man and God. But there's another sin that's the root of all sins, between Odom Lechaveiroi, between man, and that is the sin of Mechiras Yosef, that we sold Yosef HaTzadik. And as the Gemara says, the Medrash says, Reb Ovin Oimer, B'chol Dor, Adayin Chet Mechiras Yosef Kayom. In every generation, the sin of selling Yosef is still present. And as the Meshech Chochmah explains, that that's what we say in the Shmoneh Esrei, Ki ato solchon liYisrael u'mochlon l'shivtei Yeshurun b'chol dor v'dor. The mochlon l'shivtei Yeshurun is referring to the Chet of Mechiras Yosef, which was done by the Shvatim, by the tribes. So we understand that the tshuva that begins from the beginning of the Aseret Yimei Tshuva and until Yom Kippur is not only on the Chet Ha'egel and on the Chet Eitz Hadas, but also on the Chet of Mechiras Yosef. The Chet of Mechiras Yosef steht doch in Posek, Vayoymeru ish el ochiv. They said one to another, the brothers said one to another, Aval Hashemim anachnu, we're guilty al achinu, asher ho'inu b'tzoras nafshoi, we saw his pain, v'eschanenoi eleinu, as he begged us, v'loi shomanu, and we didn't listen, al kain, therefore, ba eleinu hatzora hazois. As opposed to Yosef, who was attentive even to the svas lo yodati, even to words not spoken. Madua pneichem roim hayoim. He noticed ponim zoyafois. They didn't even hear words that were expressed clearly. So our tshuva in correcting the Chet of Mechiras Yosef is to attach ourselves to the midah of Yosef HaTzadik and to become sensitive and to notice other people's pain, whether they spell it out, whether they talk it out, or they don't. Vayonos vayetze achutza, Yosef HaTzadik, who knows how to disconnect from connections that shall not be. He escapes Potiphar's wife. He knows how to be oimeid b'tzitkoi in Eretz Mitzrayim and not to be influenced, but at the same time he doesn't become wrapped up within himself, but he is sensitive to others, he's attentive, he cares. Madua pneichem roim hayoim. You know, on Rosh Hashana, the minig is, each and every one of us says to everyone, L'shona toiva, tikosei v'seichosei. Which means, first of all, that I don't mind if you have a good year. That's the first level. Second of all, I even would like you to have a good year. Third of all, I'm even willing to lend a helping hand to make that happen. That's all about breaking out of my own selfish self, reaching out to others. And that's the way we crown the king, because Vayehi b'Yeshurun melech b'hisasef roshei om. Only when there's togetherness can we crown the king. May the Rebbeinu Shalom give us the wisdom and the emotion to be able to utilize the Yomim Noiraim, utilize the great time of Rosh Hashana to make a real change in our life and become really more attentive to the Sfas Lo Yodati Eshmo, Aksive V'chasime Toive.